I'm Logan Crawford, and right now on Spotlight, we explore a profound and compelling book. It is called Pandora's Theorem. It is written by Brian Christopher Murphy. It is a gripping thriller full of political intrigue, assassinations, and a massive Canadian scandal. When psychology student Ben Jamison uncovers a chilling connection between high-profile murders, his life is turned upside down in a deadly game of cat and mouse. This book will have you on the edge of your seat as it weaves together conspiracy, mystery, and danger in the heart of Canada. We're delighted to have this very talented author join us here today on Spotlight. We thank the team at Bookside Press for helping us put him in the spotlight today. And we ask viewers like you to support authors like him by subscribing to our channel and by purchasing his amazing book. The links are below this interview. Brian, great to see you here today on Spotlight.
Thank you for having me on, Logan. I really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. Great to have you on the show. Wonderful book, a true page turner. Let's give the folks at home an overview of Pandora's Theorem.
It's pretty much a kind of a combination science fiction, medical thriller, and it's actually very similar in story to The Pelican Brief, except that it's medical rather than legal. And so it really just kind of one of those things, where you stumble upon something, and the more you find out about it, the more it leads to other things. And it was just kind of what I had learned, having been in the military, you just don't know what to expect next. And that's what I think kind of compelled me to keep working at it. Because it took me about 4 years to write that book.
Yeah.
And I started writing it when I first moved to Canada, when I lived in Toronto. And so that's why I say a lot of the places you see in there and read about, are actual places in Toronto, like Ryerson University or Eaton Center, or just different places and locations. They're places you can actually go.
How much of Ben Jamison is you?
For the most part, Ben Jamison was really more of a construct than it was me. Of course, there are certain elements in there that are kind of based on me or maybe have my traits, but I think if anything, what he and I would share would be just kind of an insatiable curiosity and just wanting to know more and more and more. Like, these questions lead to more questions, which lead to more questions, and just the more you delve into it, and the rabbit hole just goes deeper, 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 deeper. And that was kind of what was happening with me in my life at that time, because I had moved to Canada, which, Canada and the US are very similar in a lot of ways, but there's a lot of differences too. And so I was just kind of learning to navigate a new environment and social scene. And so I think a lot of that played over into the book.
Great. Tell us a little bit about your military background and how it influenced the writing of this book.
Well, my military background began at 19 when I enlisted in the Army, and I went to the Quartermaster Corps at Fort Lee, Virginia. I'm a graduate from there. And then I served 2 tours, and that was during the Cold War, as well as Operations Desert Shield and Desert Storm. So just a lot of that uncertainty of not knowing kind of what's going to happen next or where you're going to be deployed next. I think a lot of that kind of carried forward, because I had started writing the book mainly because I was interested in the publishing process, not so much the book writing. So it was really kind of a twofold purpose. And like I say, it was 20 years ago I published that book, but I've never really promoted it a whole lot. Mainly just, I like to say I was more interested in publishing than being a best-selling author. But I thought, well, it's always something I can come back to. And mainly I was looking for a means to be able to make a living without having to punch a clock. And so I would still have mobility and be able to kind of go where I want, when I want, and with just kind of the original remote work, I guess you could say.
It's amazing when you pick up something you wrote years earlier and read through it and like it still. You're like, this is good. Yeah. Did I write this?
Yeah, I feel that way a lot of times, because I go back and I read parts of it and I'm like, wow, did that really come out of me?
Exactly.
It's like just same thing, because I've done a lot of other interviews with regards to usually business and investing is what I'll be guesting on shows about.
Mm.
And then I'll go back and watch the interviews later and go, how did I know that? Where did I learn that from? But it's just from 40 years of experience, just you eventually reach a point to where you've kind of seen, you haven't seen it all, but you've seen enough, you can kind of foresee what's coming. And so a lot of that, I think, went into the book, just kind of where I saw things going with technology at that time. And that was back in, 80s, 90s. I started writing it in 2000, and we had Y2K going on, and they thought that was going to be a huge crisis. And so really it was just kind of product of the time, I guess you could say. If I had to rewrite it today, it would probably be more of a cyber thriller.
Tell us a little bit about the role of the media plays through Dannielle in unraveling the conspiracy.
With Dannielle, it was more, it was just sort of somebody else that was kind of caught up in it. You find yourself caught up in certain events, and there's a lot of people that are there along with you. So that's kind of like the storyline of Dannielle played into that, to where she was more, she was a friend of mine at the time, and somebody I would just call on from time to time. And so that, because a lot of the characters in the books, their names are actually people I know or family members, and though the character themselves may not be that person.
Yeah.
So yeah, the character of Dannielle was really just not a real close friend of mine, but a good friend that I could always talk to. And so that's kind of how that character played in.
Tell us a little bit about Ben's background in psychology and how that helps him unravel the mystery.
Well, I think the psychology aspect, whenever you're writing a thriller or anything to do with science fiction, there are extremely high levels of imagination. And, because you're imagining things that haven't actually happened, or, are not technologically possible at this time, or so we think, because the latter half of the book, when I was writing that, it was more of an exploration of, all the various technologies we have that we don't even know anything about. And so I came to think that's what it has influenced that. And even today at 58, I look back, because most of my adult life was pre-internet, and I look at how things have changed just in the last 20 years. And
Amazing.
I'm just blown away by the technology. I recently had purchased one of the Oculus Quest VR headsets, and I didn't even know we had that kind of technology right now. It's just truly amazing.
Yeah.
Because when I was in high school, my goal was to be a computer programmer. But at the time, the programming languages were advancing so fast, I was just afraid that everything that I would have learned in college would have been obsolete by the time I graduated. So I decided to major in business and pursue an MBA instead. And writing kind of became, really just something I was always interested in. I've always had a creative streak. And, just in the past year, I've published a lot of different articles on different topics, mainly leadership and thought leadership, on LinkedIn and several other avenues. And lately, it's like I've had different magazines wanting to put me on the cover, either as one of the most influential CEOs of 2024, and
wow,
that kind of stuff. But what I found, most of them, it's like, yeah, they'll put you on the cover if you're willing to pony up the dough.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
But it's like, but still, it's like it's advertising, and really, it's kind of street credibility in the corporate world.
It's always nice to be recognized, that's for sure. Before we go today, I want to ask you about Pandora's Theorem and whether you have envisioned it as a movie or a TV series, or if there'll be a sequel to the book as well.
Well, interestingly, when I wrote it with the idea that it was going to be the first in a trilogy. Mm-hmm. There's going to be Pandora's Theorem, Pandora's Conundrum, and Pandora's Enigma. So it was actually planned as a 3-book thing. I actually did get the second book in the trilogy written, but it was on a 3.5-inch floppy disk, to give you an idea of how long ago I did that. And I lost the disk.
Yeah.
And even if I could find it, well, there are no computers that work with 3.5-inch discs anyway.
Exactly.
But
well,
yeah,
so it sounds like the
movie.
sequel was written, but it was lost. So it might resurface at one point. You never know.
No, exactly. This could end up turning up anywhere, some box I haven't looked in 20 years.
Yep. And as far as a film goes, would you, I imagine you'd love to see it on the big screen.
Oh yeah, that would just be fantastic because then it's kind of like movies are like the internet, they're forever. So it's leaving behind a legacy of entertainment. And that's something I would love to be able to do.
Absolutely. Well, The Pelican Brief was turned into a film, a successful film. You said this is similar. You made the comparison, so that I think this would be a successful film as well. Without a
Yeah.
doubt, it's truly a wonderful book, a great read. It's called Pandora's Theorem. It is a gripping thriller that is full of political intrigue, assassinations, and a massive Canadian scandal. You will want to flip through this book to find out what's going to happen next just as quickly as you can, and you're going to be hoping that Brian finds that sequel because you'd want to find out more about what happens to the players in this story. Brian, thank you so much for joining us here today on Spotlight.
Thank you very much for having me on.
I appreciate your time, sir. And to the folks at home, I'm Logan Crawford, thanking you for your time this time until next time on Spotlight.